Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a moment in sports history that is so bizarre, so completely surreal, it honestly just defies belief. We're unpacking the absolute spectacle of November 21, 1973. Picture this. You've got a national stadium, thousands of fans in the stands, the referee blows the whistle, and a team methodically passes the ball up the field to score a goal. The only catch? There is absolutely no one playing against them. Let's explore exactly why this happened.
Right, let's just dive straight into this core question. How exactly does a crucial World Cup qualifier, a match meant to decide who goes to literally the biggest sporting tournament on Earth, end up with only one team on the pitch? To figure out why this playoff happened the way it did, we have to look at this terrifying collision between international sports and global geopolitics.
So picture the scene. You've got 15,000 confused spectators sitting in the Estadio Nacional in Santiago, Chile. 11 Chilean players take to the pitch, the referee blows his whistle, and the team just passes the ball among themselves for exactly 30 seconds, before their captain, Francisco Chamaco Valdez, almost apologetically kicks the ball right into an empty net. And just like that, the match is over. It was a complete ghost game.
Chilean star striker Carlos Caselli hit the nail on the head when he called this moment exactly what it was: a farce. I mean, sure, his team had just technically secured their spot in the 1974 World Cup, but the victory felt completely hollow. So why did their opponents just vanish? Well, to get that, we need to rewind a bit.
Part 1. The UEFA CONMEBOL draw and a forced collision.
So how did teams from Europe and South America end up in this sudden death clash in the first place? Well, it actually came down to a really weird quirk in the World Cup qualification rules. The Soviet Union won UEFA's Group 9, and Chile won CONMEBOL's Group 3. But because they happened to have the worst statistical records among all the group winners in their respective continents, they were forced into a rare, high-stakes two-leg playoff just to fight for a single ticket to the tournament. Initially, it was just meant to be a simple, if a bit stressful, sporting clash.
Moving on to Part 2, the September coup, where politics violently interrupts the pitch.
Now, the timeline here is absolutely crucial because it is impossibly compressed. In a matter of mere weeks, in the fall of 1973, sports and deadly politics collided at breakneck speed. We're talking about shifting from a violent military coup in early September straight into high-stakes international fixtures by late September and November.
Because on September 11, 1973, literally everything changed. A military junta violently overthrew the democratically elected government of Salvador Allende. Now, Allende was a Marxist and a socialist, and he was allied with the Soviet Union. But the new regime, led by General Augusto Pinochet, was staunchly anti-communist. So practically overnight, diplomatic relations between Chile and the USSR were completely shattered, right before their football teams were supposed to meet.
Before all this, the Estadio Nacional in Santiago was this massive 80,000-seat beacon of national pride. But following the coup, the military transformed it into a sprawling detention center. Thousands of suspected political dissidents were held there. The stands literally became holding pens. The velodrome was used for interrogations, and machine guns were positioned right there in the stadium. This incredibly grim reality is the direct backdrop for the football match.
Which brings us to Part 3. The incredible tension in Moscow for the 0-0 first leg.
You can only imagine how hostile the environment was for that first leg in Moscow. The Soviet Union had officially broken diplomatic ties with Chile at this point. At the airport, no authorities received the Chilean team, and key players had their passports intensely scrutinized. Inside the stadium, journalists and cameras were completely banned. Worse still, the left-leaning Chilean players were absolutely terrified, knowing their families back home were under military surveillance. But somehow, despite this immense psychological pressure, the match ended in a tense 0-0 draw.
Chilean player Leonardo Velas actually described feeling like a harlequin, basically a helpless pawn trapped in this terrifying political theater. You know, prior to the coup, these players were paraded around as symbols of unity by the socialist government, and then suddenly, they're being used by a new military dictatorship to project an image of normalcy to the rest of the world.
Part 4. FIFA's blind inspection and the illusion of normality.
So, as the second leg approached, FIFA sends delegates down for an inspection. And after a mere 10-minute walkthrough, they officially declared that everything appeared normal and the stadium was completely fit for football. But the truly horrifying, documented reality was that detainees were literally hidden in the bowels of the stadium during this very inspection, with guns pointed at their heads to keep them silent.
In response to the obvious atrocities happening, the Soviet Union, supported by its Eastern Bloc allies, flat-out refused to travel. They sent an official letter to FIFA, formally boycotting the match rather than stepping foot on a pitch they viewed as an active crime scene. FIFA, however, dug their heels in and refused to move the match to a neutral country.
And that leads us to Part 5, the Ghost match and its aftermath, a truly hollow victory.
In what has to be one of the most surreal twists to all this, the Chilean Federation actually sent FIFA an invoice. Yep, they demanded $300,000 in compensation for the USSR's absence. They claimed this was to cover lost ticket sales and the cost of preparing the game, completely leaning into this bizarre charade that a regular football match had simply been canceled by a no-show opponent.
The sporting consequences of all this rippled out for years. FIFA officially awarded Chile a 2-0 walkover victory. Chile went on to the 1974 World Cup in West Germany, but honestly, under the psychological weight of the whole ordeal, they crashed out in the first round without winning a single game. Meanwhile, the Soviet team faced severe consequences from FIFA. Their disqualification triggered a steep decline, causing them to miss several subsequent major tournaments.
But, the true aftermath went way, way beyond the pitch. These players carried deep, unimaginable personal trauma. Before departing for the World Cup, Carlos Cosli bravely engaged in a personal act of defiance by refusing to shake General Pinochet's hand. And he did this despite the brutal risks, having recently learned that his own mother had been abducted and tortured by the regime. These athletes were quite literally trapped in a nightmare where sports and survival intersected.
Today, the legacy of this dark chapter is literally etched into the physical stadium. Amidst the modernized stands at the Estadio Nacional, there is a section known as Escotilla Ocho, or Hatch 8, where the original wooden benches are preserved. It stands as a solemn, powerful memorial to the estimated 40,000 total detainees who were held within those walls, making sure that the stadium's dual history as a sporting venue and a prison is never forgotten.
So I want to leave you with this final thought. We always want sports to be this escape, right? A totally neutral space away from the real world. But as the 1973 Ghost match vividly demonstrates, the relationship between global politics and the games we play is completely inseparable. And sometimes it's deeply tragic. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning the history behind the headlines.